public administration comprises of public and administration. Administration has been in existence from time immemorial, but whereas the study of public administration is concerned, it was given a great impetus by a renowned scholar known as Woodrow Wilson in the 1880s. And it was the study of administration, his seminal essay, that basically triggered the interest and stressed for the need of a scientific study of administration that led to the evolution of a discipline called public administration. Now, if we look at Woodrow Wilson and his background, he was an outstanding professor of political science, a great academician, a great scholar, a great statesman, a great educationist, and so on. And therefore, it was his versatility that made him foresee future challenges. And thereafter, he became sensitized to the contemporary events of his time that led him to basically think of a separate discipline of public administration. So, if we see Woodrow Wilson, he gave a new dimension to the study of public administration, and as I already mentioned earlier, with his famous essay, The Study of Administration. It is very important because what we are talking about today is ecology and governance. So it is very important for our students to know that any theory or discipline or approach does not evolve in isolation. It is affected by various factors that are prevalent in the society, and these factors may be either social factors, cultural factors, technological factors, political, economic, and so on. And so what was the case with public administration as well? Woodrow Wilson was also influenced by such factors that were central to the environment. And what was his aim that led him to the evolution of a discipline of public administration was that he wanted to reform the civil services that was prevalent in America in those times, and he wanted to institutionalize his ideas towards a separate study thereafter. He wanted to reform the civil service in America that began in 1883 with the Pendleton Act that gave way to corruption and the spoil system. And it brought in a lot of nepotism, and his idea was basically to reform the civil service and to introduce efficiency and thereafter streamline the delivery of services. So, firstly, if we take up Woodrow Wilson, what he talks about in his essay is the politics-administration dichotomy. Being a professor of political science, and moreover the environment, the scenario at that time was such that political science was basically considered with the formulation of policies, plans, and thereafter. And administration was not given a separate status, and it was considered as a mere clerical thing. It was just considered as works being done by the clerical staff. But with the growing complexities of the state and the widening of the functions, it was Woodrow Wilson who felt that politics and administration have to be segregated. They cannot be treated as one, because political science is just related with formulating, whereas administration should be related with implementation. So he laid stress on the implementation aspect of administration, and thereafter he assigned the task and developed the discipline of public administration, which consisted of implementation of these programs and policies that were designed by the political scientists. So that is how he said that no, it is very important to segregate politics and administration. One consists of mere formulation and the other has to consist of the implementation of such plans and programs. Next, another vision of Woodrow Wilson that we talk about is that he wanted to establish administration as a separate science. And this was already happening in Europe, and there were French and German academies that they were influencing the development of an administrative science. So Woodrow Wilson also was inspired by such developments that were taking place in the European continent, and he wanted to give administration a similar status by radically changing its aims, thoughts, and thereafter its principles. Another thought or another vision of his that we study is that he wanted to bring in the comparative method of administration. That is, that he wanted to, what this comparative method means, that he wanted to extract the best of all the worlds and the best thing that could be suitable to his kind of state, to his kind of society, but keeping in mind the present environment also. It is not that he just wanted to pick up the best of all worlds and apply it to his state. No, he said that the environment of that particular state also has to play a major role while adapting other situational aspects of other countries also. So when we talk of ecology and governance and we talk of Woodrow Wilson, so he is a very important thinker who laid great stress on the environmental aspects also. That is how he came up with his politics administration dichotomy. That is how he came up with the development of administration as a science. That is how he came up with his comparative method. And he was of the view that he has to extract the best from all the worlds, but without importing their autocratic spirit. So, keeping these things in mind, he wanted to give a separate status to the discipline of public administration, although it started with a self-conscious inquiry on behalf of Woodrow Wilson, but various factors that are attributed to the environment played a major role where the discipline of public administration is concerned and where it exactly stands today. Now, another scholar who contributed to the classical school was Henry Fayol. Henry Fayol was a contemporary of F.W. Taylor, and it is considered that his writings preceded that of Taylor. Now, he contributed significantly to the corpus of management concepts, and he is considered, Taylor is considered as the father of scientific management, but we generally take up Fayol or consider Fayol as a pioneer of these scientific management principles. He was basically a graduate in the mining engineering, and he worked in a mining company. And he later on led to the success as he took on the directorship of that mining industry. He took it to great heights, and this success and his contribution can only be attributed to his personal traits, which again was due to some external factors that played a major role. Now, if we talk of the environmental aspects that led Fayol to contribute or to evolve a theory of management or contribute to the corpus of management, was that he was motivated greatly by the Cartesian philosophy and Adam Smith's writing on the division of labor. So, where management was confined to industrial undertakings and public, he belonged to that era rather, where management was confined to industrial undertakings and public administration was confined to governmental activities. But he outrightly rejected such a division, and he felt that nothing was more specific to an industrial undertaking or to governmental activities. What he propagated was that there were a universal set of principles that were applicable to any kind of a functional or organizational setting, irrespective of a commercial undertaking or a governmental undertaking. So he presented his ideas in the context of industrial undertakings in the first phase of his contribution towards the corpus of management, and he divided these activities into technical activities, commercial, financial, security, accounting, and managerial. So if we talk of again the environment that motivated him, he wanted to decrease the overlapping of functions that was taking place in a managerial organization. So basically he started with first classifying categorizing what the organizational functions were, and then secondly he came on to the functions of management. That after categorizing, okay, these are the functions of an organization, then he came on to categorizing the functions of management. Once he did that, then he was more specific and he formulated a set of 14 principles that basically related to the task of the administrator. He classified the functions of an administrator, what an administrator should undertake in an organization. So I have already spoken about the categorization of the organization on behalf of technical, commercial, financial activities, and so on. Now, if we talk of the functions of management, so he spoke of POCCC, that is known as planning, organizing, commanding, controlling, and coordinating. These, according to him, were the functions of management. After this, he came on to develop a set of 14 principles that were basically related to the tasks of the administrator, and they related to division of work, that is specialization of, in today's context, what we call it as specialization, authority and responsibility, discipline, unity of command, unity of direction, subordination of individual interest to personal interest, remuneration for personnel, centralization, the scalar chain, that is hierarchy, order or placement, equity, that is equality, stability of tenure, initiative, and esprit de corps, that is basically harmony or team spirit, what we call. Thus, it is seen that Fayol, he tried to bifurcate functions of the top management and the bottom management, and he tried to design a more rational system of organization in which the fulfillment of the primary goal of enterprise was to be constituted. So then once Fayol was of the opinion that he had classified the functions of the top management, the bottom management, the middle level activities, then we come on to another very important thinker, and I have already spoken about him as the father of scientific management, is F.W. Taylor. Now, Taylor is generally regarded as the father of scientific management and also of modern management practices. He was a mechanical engineer by profession, and he was even the inventor of the cutting tool, the steel hammer, hydraulic power loading machine, boring and turning mills, etc. Taylor was influenced by the then existing environment factors that propelled him to come up with his theory of scientific management. Now, what were these environmental factors that propelled him to come up with his theory? Was the Industrial Revolution that was taking place, or rather took place, in the later half of the 19th century. It broke out in Europe, but later on it passed on to the American continent as well. What was happening during the time of the Industrial Revolution was that productivity was increasing in leaps and bounds, and at the same time the efficiency was decreasing. So there was a lot of wastage that was taking place. Now, Taylor studied the shop floor level to understand why this efficiency was decreasing, why this efficiency was low. At the same time, productivity was increasing, but efficiency was going on decreasing. Therefore, he propounded to decrease this inefficiency by the application of scientific management techniques. And he believed that management was a true science and assumed man to be an economic man. Taylor's main aim was to promote, as I have already mentioned, organizational efficiency in order to reduce the wastage of manpower and other resources as well. So, what management, as of the view of Taylor, was basically a true science that consisted of fixed laws, rules, and principles, and it had universal application. So, Taylor was of the view that if these principles are applied in any organization, they will help in carrying out activities through well-established methods and in order to get predictable results. So, he began with tracing the root cause of low efficiency, which was due to the presence of a phenomena called soldering, that is, tendency on the part of workers to restrict the output. This was the main cause that led to the inefficiency. So, he decided to increase efficiency by decreasing soldering and with the application of time and motion studies. But basically, he laid stress on 4 principles of scientific management. The first being the development of a true science, which meant developing or choosing the one best way of doing work. Secondly, scientifically selecting and the progressive development of the workmen. He wanted to scientifically select things and which would then lead to the development of the workmen. The third thing that he propounded was the bringing together of the science of work and scientifically selected and trained men, which meant cooperation of basically the management and the workers. Then fourthly, he laid stress on the division of work and responsibility between the management and workers. Another very important concept that Taylor brought in was the concept of mental revolution, which was the realization on part of both the workers and management in order to mitigate the unrest that could erupt from or the contradictions that would erupt on behalf of both the workers and the management. He also spoke of functional foremanship, in which he said that instead of he outrightly rejected the linear system of functioning, and he said that functional foremanship is where there are 8 specialized branches of study, and there are 8 workmen, and under each workman is responsible to a single boss. So 8 workmen would be responsible to 8 different bosses. So, and with this he developed some more mechanisms to serve his principle of scientific management, that was the differential piece rate plan, the bonus system, the exceptional principle, standardization of tools. Weber considered bureaucracy as a corollary to large organizations, and therefore he over specialized division of labor, and he felt that there should be a right to control, and he wanted to basically to direct the activities of others. So in order to make such a control very effective, he came up with what is called authority, and it was classified on the basis of traditional, charismatic and the legal rational, which we associate with the legal rational ideal of bureaucracy, or his model of bureaucracy itself. And then he spoke of, in his concept or in his idea of bureaucracy, he spoke of impersonal order, that his bureaucracy should be based on impersonal order, it should be based on rules, there should be a sphere of competence, a chain of hierarchy, and personal and public ends should be segregated, it should be based on written documents, and so on. So basically what his idea was, what he had in mind, keeping in mind the ecological or the environmental factors, was to give a very scientific approach to the ideal of bureaucracy.
In comparative public administration, the process of decision making assumed significance so as to study the interaction between the external and internal environment of public organizations, so as to analyze how the nature of decision making influences the socio and cultural environment, and also it's being influenced by such an environment which includes, as I've already mentioned, socio-economic and political change that are taking place in the environment. So there was a felt need that studies on decision making can really reinforce the ecological and developmental perspectives, that too in the context of comparative public administration, and that led to the emergence of general systems theory. So according to Talcott Parsons, system refers to 2 aspects of interdependencies. They are a complex of interdependency between parts, components and processes that involves predictable pattern of relationship. Secondly, it is the existing interdependency between the complex and its external environment. Further, it may be seen that a system evolves in the context of a larger system, and in addition it has got its own set of subsystems. Moreover, each system or a subsystem is made distinct from its environment by a theoretically defined boundary. Thus, the concept of system involves the study of the parts of a system, the interaction among such parts, and the interaction between the system and the environment. Therefore, we can say the study of system-environment interaction postulates the concepts such as inputs which enter into the system from the environment, throughputs, that is, the entire process takes place within the system, and it comes out as the outputs which go again to the system, that is the environment, it goes again. So the entire process, it is complemented by a feedback mechanism operating between the system and the environment. Like it is mutually influencing each other. So the dynamism of any system relies heavily upon the perfect balance between the system and its environment. So this is general systems theory. It served as a framework for the theorists, for the administrative thinkers like F.W. Riggs, then Martin Landau. So all these thinkers, they wanted to make decision making a kind of very influential kind of process, because anyhow the decision making, it is going to be made and implemented in the system. So henceforth these thinkers, they created a felt need that decision making needs to be given impetus. So followed by, we will be discussing about the structural functional approach, because I am discussing this general systems theory and structural functional approach just to give you an idea or a background idea about Riggs' administrative ecology. So before dwelling on to that administrative ecology of F.W. Riggs, we need to understand what made F.W. Riggs to bring out a concept, to bring out a study in that, especially in the context of public administration, that too in a cross-cultural setting. So till then there was no kind of a study which was made uniquely for such kind of comparative analysis, but it was first time F.W. Riggs felt the need, probably because of the Ford Foundation and other thinkers. So such a kind of impetus was given, and it was through this F.W. Riggs was able to propound a theory. Moreover, he wanted to bring a science, public administration. So before dwelling on what Riggs feels about the administration, so let us discuss about the structural functional approach, which formed the basis, or which formed the formed the framework for F.W. Riggs. The scholars like Talcott Parsons, Robert Merton and Marion Levy have used the structural functional approach for social analysis. In structural functionalism, social structure is considered as any pattern of behavior which has become a standard features of social system. In this, structures, as the very approach itself says, structures are, it may be concrete, such as government departments and bureaus, or it may be analytic, that is construct, that is a concept which can be extracted from concrete reality, such as structure of authority. All social structures perform some functions. In structural functional terms, a function involves a pattern of interdependence between two or more structures. In social systems approach, a one-to-one relationship between structures and functions should not be assumed. That is, a social structure may perform more than one function, and likewise, a function may be performed by more than one structure as well. Though structural functional approach assumes that not all kinds of functions are performed in all societies, yet these thinkers believe that there are some structures and functions which are to be considered as requisite or prerequisites for survival of any society. In comparative analysis, functional requisites provide a basis for comparative research involving cross-environmental settings. In public administration, it was Dwight Waldo in the year 1955 who suggested that structural functional analysis might provide a framework for constructing a model for a general type of administrative system. In fact, Waldo's suggestion was first followed by F.W. Riggs when he used that typology called as agraria and industria. Though other scholars were also influenced by structural functional approach, it was Riggs who was strongly influenced by the structural functional approach, especially in terms of comparative public administration. Basically, the structural functional approach in the context of comparative public administration has brought the consciousness that institutions and practices that are prevailing in the Western administrative systems may not necessarily be followed or may not necessarily be successful in the context of developing as well as underdeveloping countries. So this concept or this theory evolved that not necessarily this may be successful in the developing countries. Indigenous structures in non-Western nations, though seemingly dysfunctional in the purview of Western scholars, may prove functional for their own particular social settings. The ecological perspective of public administration by F.W. Riggs gave a new approach to the study of public administration in a cross-cultural setting. In fact, Riggs based his survey in the fields of socio-political, communication, economic and cultural domains, and study the systems of USA, Siam, Philippines, Thailand. His fundamental approach to study these systems was structural functional, as we have already mentioned, in which he was mainly influenced by Talcott Parsons. Moreover, he used the framework typology called as Agraria, Transitia and Industria typology to analyze these systems in an ecological framework, and further he tried to segregate. Fred Rix was one of the first scholars to point out that man is a product of his environment, and so also his political, economic and social institutions. Rix had observed how the effort to improve the administrative system in developing countries through the adoption of Western institutions and methods of training had failed. Though these institutions had succeeded very well in Western countries, there were many anomalies in terms of functioning, especially in the context of developing countries. So Rix wanted to study the strange phenomena of apparent irrationality that is existing between these systems. He found that attempts to import Western concepts into the non-Western world had resulted in superimposed institutions, that is, coexistence of indigenous institutions of a traditional type in a complex pattern of heterogeneous overlapping.